What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Jack Ramsays live show. Danny Marang, Brandon Sprague. It's a day. That's gonna be a day. It's gonna be a day. You know.
Okay. All right.
I've been talking to a bunch of people all morning, all day, just trying to get a general sense of like where things are.
Yeah.
And not just here in Portland, but just nationally, like what it looks like to other people. And it's grim, dude. It's really grim. First of all, I should say, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you. We'll let everybody kind of stumble in here. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Find us wherever you get podcasts. We're back to it, posting all the post-game shows. We'll have the mailbag pod on Sunday. Yeah, I think Sunday. We'll post this one up when it's all said and done. If you're watching here live, thank you very much. We appreciate you. If you're first time here, thank you. Be like Keith Sackman and subscribe. He just subscribed. We appreciate you, Keith.
Shout out Keith.
Roll your thumb over, click the subscribe button. It's free. If you want to be a member and be a part of the watch parties, you can do that. I think we set it at $2.99. So we are going to do that for basically every game between now and damn near the All-Star break. So we had Joe in there last night, and it was a lot of fun. I'm going to try and get some more guests for the live watch parties. I think that's probably the way that ends up being the most fun. Well, this team sucks something fierce. We just bring in, other guys, just kind of hang out, watch the game, and kind of shoot the, back and forth. We actually have a lot to talk about that's not singular game related. A lot of high level stuff, Brandon. You've been off the radio for what, a week plus now?
This is my second week.
Second week?
Yep.
When you're not sitting there looking at the day-to-day of all of this, does your view of it change at all?
The team?
Yeah.
No, not much. I mean, the one thing I've always aimed to do doing this is, however I feel about anything, just share it.
Not get lost in the sauce.
Not get lost in the sauce. If I'm wrong, whatever, you're going to be wrong. That's part of the business. I think it's when people pivot out, but always be honest as I possibly can. It doesn't mean I'm always right. That doesn't mean I'm almost the most well informed, but it doesn't really change when I'm away from it. Anything, it's nice to do things like this because I'm not doing it for a daily basis for 2 straight weeks. There's a rhythm to it. There's like an energy with it, and when I take that off a little bit, I get to that point where I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do this tomorrow. So the Blazer pod has at least been nice to keep me kind of just in the loop in that sense.
Hilariously, Stephen Gray just put in here Okoro and K-Love, and literally what I was doing before the pod was like, I wonder what the money turns into with Okoro and K-Love. And it actually, the Blazers take on $7 million. So it's a non-starter.
That's not
But if you throw Robert Covington in there, the Blazers save $5.8 million. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, and Okoro's obviously under contract for a couple more years, so
yeah,
something to consider. It looks like the Cleveland Cavaliers are trying to solve their problems by adding Rajon Rondo, which that's always worked out for everybody in the past. Let me tell you.
Hey,
if you've got problems, add Rondo.
Say what you want, but he's got a couple examples where it has paid off. Playoff Rondo's a real thing.
Playoff Rondo.
Yep.
Gaming Skiller says potential draft picks episode right around the bend. Listen, when we hit the All-Star break, there will be a hard pivot to the NBA draft. I have already started recording a ton of college games of basically the top 10 prospects, going back and watching stuff. I recorded the Auburn game the other day against LSU because I want to go back and watch Jabari Smith against a good team. Like LSU's got some dudes too, and it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
Although I'm not gonna lie, I do enjoy NBA draft Twitter and draft prospects. I've always said I like the young guys the most. Like that's kind of always been my thing. But when you're a team that's kind of supposed to be in the thick of it, it's kind of frustrating to be talking about that. And not in the sense of like the Warriors where they're like, oh no, everybody's injured, everything sucks. You know what the reality is. This was just, oh no, they just suck.
Yeah.
Like
it's always different. Like I appreciate the draft. I watch the draft every year. I love the lottery process, even though they've changed the odds. But in terms of like applying the Portland kind of viewpoint on it, it's not an area. 2017 was the year that I remember getting super into it, reading everybody's kind of profiles, watching random YouTube videos and rabbit holes, and to whiff those as bad as they did, that I think actually cost them everything they were aiming to achieve. It just hurts. So the last couple of years, it really hasn't been a thought process, I think, from the Portland perspective. So it just varies year to year for me to apply Portland to it versus my own special interests into the draft.
Johnny Foe says, why do we have to wait to make a trade? This is so ridiculous and frustrating. You can't just force the action. As much as I dislike Neil O'Shea, the human being, he was right on one count. It takes two to tango. The Blazers' assets aren't great, and they are not the domino. They are not the domino that's going to trigger everything. It's probably going to be Indiana or Philadelphia. Those are the dominoes because they have the pieces that everybody's kind of wrapped up in and interested in Sabonis, in TJ Warren, in Miles Turner, in Karis LeVert, in Chris Duarte. Like, there's a lot of different moving parts there. Like, there's no sacred cow in Indiana.
Yeah.
They are willing and able to blow that up entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, obviously, with Ben Simmons. Boston is in a sideways spot. There is sentiment from the folks that I talked to around the league that Boston may be open to the idea of trading Jalen.
I mean, I think they're getting pretty close to that point. Everybody's made a note of what he did yesterday, 36 shots, 0 assists, but it's just, I don't know. I go back and forth on Jalen Jason. And I always fall back and forth between I'd keep them because they're still so young. Do you really punt on that situation this soon? But you also watch them play. Like, this season's been a nightmare.
They need a playmaker.
They have to have a playmaker.
Yeah. And neither of those guys, I don't think either one of those guys is going to develop into one that's good enough to lift the other.
Well, I mean, does either feel like a one for you?
No.
Right.
No. They're to me, they're both, like, I think Tatum can be a number one option in the sense of like how Kawhi Leonard is a number one option. But when Kawhi has been his best, Toronto, what did he have? He had a table setter in Kyle Lowry. And I think they need, and Smart is not enough of a shooter or a natural playmaker to make that work.
No.
Like, Lowry's not the greatest point guard of all time, but he's a Hall of Fame caliber point guard. Mm-hmm. Like, he as much as everybody talks about like Dame's like a scoring version of Chauncey Billups, Kyle Lowry is Chauncey Billups. I showed you the comparison between the two of them a couple months ago. Their numbers are almost identical.
Yeah.
Like, it's creepy how close their numbers are. Their career numbers just line up like you wouldn't believe. If I told you one was the other, and you reversed them, you wouldn't know. And that's just kind of one of those seasons or one of those reasons why the fit matters so much.
Right.
So, everybody's talking about, playoff Rondo now in the chat. That and Stephen Gray says, should have got Sadiq Bey instead of the Covington trade. Nah, that hindsight's a little sideways. If they were going to go a different way, they should have gone for Aaron Gordon. That's the way they should have gone. And I had a bunch of idiots criticizing that at the time, and those guys remain idiots. And, Aaron Gordon's probably going to end up on an all-defensive team this year.
It'd be nice to have a 6'8" athletic wing who can lock people up.
Yeah. The one thing the Blazers have missed literally for 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
did anybody have any reporting on how close maybe they came to that, or was that always just Denver?
No, they came very close. Neil did not actually want Gordon. He wanted Covington.
Ah, cool.
So
good for Neil.
Yeah, they also chased Harrison Barnes too, which I wasn't opposed to, but it's like Barnes doesn't solve any of the real problems either as far as playmaking and like perimeter defense. Like, Barnes would be a good ad. There's no doubt about it. But I think that's more of a luxury move than it would be the right move.
Yeah, you mentioned the dominoes falling. I think that's a pretty pivotal point right now for the league. Is there's so many COVID things going on with the league, and all these teams kind of waiting stuff out right now. You mentioned dominoes. I mean, I think there's a lot of other dominoes you could mention too. Like there's the report about Cleveland and LA. Are those going to be? Yeah, I think there's like 5 or 6 teams that they just need to make that one move, and maybe the rest of the league just kind of follows right through. And
it would be hilarious if Rondo was like the cork popping.
It wouldn't shock me though.
Well, what's ended up happening is it's going to be a Mo Harkless used ball rack trade.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, it's going to be a top 55 protected second round pick in like 2026.
Right.
And it's going to, if it doesn't convey, or it's a top 55 protected this year, but if it doesn't convey for 2 years, it turns into nothing. It's going to be I would imagine the most minimal thing possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns into the equivalent of a used ball rack. It's nothing. What's going to end up happening is the Lakers are going to do this, and they're going to take no player back, and they're going to retain Stanley Johnson. That's what's going to happen in that situation. They should be getting rid of DeAndre Jordan, but listen, I am all for the Lakers being in more chaos. I was hoping they would find a way to keep Rondo too, so they could run those Rondo-Russ Westbrook lineups that are just the biggest dumpster fire I've ever seen.
I think it's one of the more creative offensive lineups I've ever heard of.
It is so bad. Anthony Irwin, who covers the Lakers and has the Anthony Irwin Show, good friend of mine, I think their net rating was like, I want to say it was like negative 39 over like 300 minutes. It was
with those two dudes.
Oh, it was so bad.
Lord.
It was just a train wreck. Train wreck. Eduardo Tovar says trade for Patrick Williams. Listen, if they're going to trade for Patrick Williams, it's going to be for like Thad Young. A guy who can grease a second unit as a playmaker, as a scorer, a little bit of everything. They really like Patrick Williams. There's a good chance he could return for the playoffs.
What was his injury again?
Oh,
ACL,
wrist
right?
injury.
Wrist injury. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Required surgery. So
yeah, that was unfortunate for them.
Yeah, because he really is the piece that they need. Like he's the big-bodied wing.
Yep.
Super athletic, and was showing.
He
some
can
stuff.
defend.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really the. I mean, if you're looking at Portland, that's really the again the thing that they've missed for so long. It's just it's a bit of a bummer because Chicago's a very very fun team.
Yeah.
But it's a weird thing. I want to hit on some of this. Shout out John Hollinger, who always seems to write about Portland somehow, one way or another.
He worked here, man. He's connected to it,
and he's a Portland guy through and through.
Yeah.
But if you haven't subscribed to the Left Athletic, I'll kind of highlight some of the things in here. I'm not gonna like use the whole piece here because that's not what we do here. Pay for your stuff. But one of the things he talks about, he's got his trade breakdown kind of list of like players who are going to dictate the 2022 trade deadline. And this is kind of the dominoes we're talking about falling. Number 1 is Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is the apex domino. Excuse me. But within that domino, he talks about Jaylen Brown. He talks about the guys from Indiana, a combination of Sabonis, Duarte, and TJ Warren. For Simmons, Paul Reed, and Isaiah Joe. But you also talk about Miles Turner and Malcolm Brogdon, Karis LeVert. Like, there's a lot there. The next line, the next player is Robert Covington. And basically, the gist of it is getting under the tax. Cov's owed basically $13 million. So that means if you trade out Cov, you can take back a guy who's making roughly $10 million. Or if you trade out Cov and a vet minimum guy, McLemore, Zeller, any of those guys, Snell, then you can take back $12 million. And that gets you, that opens up the door for a lot of different players that are coming back. And here's some of the stuff that they put in here, or that he put in there. Trading Covington for Serge Ibaka and Detroit's 2025 second round pick. Serge is pretty washed at this point.
Yeah.
His back's cooked, unfortunately. And I love Serge. I think he was one of the more underrated guys in his career, in his prime. I wanted him in Portland for years.
Yep.
But now his athleticism is just sapped, and his back is, unfortunately, when you give a bad back at 6'10" in the NBA, you're pretty much done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the telling things, whether it's Bird or Nash or any of those guys, man. When the back goes, it's just, the other one here is sending Cove and Cody Zeller to the Knicks for Taj Gibson, Kevin Knox, and one of New York's many future seconds. That's the one trade I think I've been willing to make with the Knicks. Taj Gibson, shout out, fight on. He just won't die.
No, he's somehow still in the league. I watched this guy play at college.
Yeah, I mean, and Taj is just a dude. Like he's a dude. Knox is a guy who just had potential and just hasn't.
It's not gone well at all.
No, and a bunch of future seconds. I mean, I feel like that's selling a little bit low. That's a bit of a Neil O'Shea. Yeah, that's a Neil O'Shea redraft guy for sure.
Knox has real potential. He's got good size. He shot 34%. Like
I'm thinking this is like wing Noah Vonleh.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I can see that.
And I was a huge Vonleh guy coming out of college. Like if you were building a power forward in the lab, it would come out looking like Noah Vonleh.
You don't hear that very often. I was a huge Noah Vonleh. Oh,
dude, Noah Vonleh at Indiana, man.
He was good.
Loved good. I mean, just a wet jumper, just a huge ass. When you look at a power forward and you see a guy that explosive and that athletic that has a dump truck, you're like,
you need big butts. Yep.
If you got a butt like that, man, defensively you're just strong. You clear out space. You're a hell of a rebounder, and it was just like, this guy's gonna be good, and he just wasn't. It was a major bummer. The last one he mentions in here, Covington to Phoenix for another guy that hasn't hit and hasn't stayed healthy for Dario Saric and 2 future seconds. This would kind of fit pretty well into the Portland tank plan because Saric is out for the year with an ACL.
He'll be back next year.
Yes.
This would be, you'd have your bench guy coming back from the injury.
So, and this would be like, we're going to shorten the rotation and somebody younger. Greg Brown's getting some minutes now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
Trendon Watford's getting minutes now. This is how you effectively tank. Like your roster is set up to, well, we're not tanking, Mr. Silver. We're playing our guys. One of them just happens to not be eligible to play for the rest of the season.
Right.
And also getting a couple seconds. They would also have $9.2 million, which is a good salary to get back, right around that $9 to $12 million range. Those are the tradable deals. And Dario Saric is a guy that's been traded like 13 times. Because he just kind of fits the idea of like, he should be good. Like he can do some things. He can create off the bounce a little bit. You can be your small ball center. He can stretch the floor. Like he's viable.
Yeah.
But those are the options that are on the table in that regard. There was another one in here. Let me see if I can find it. He did mention as well, as far as the Lakers are concerned, that the Lakers would be watching for off-ball guards. Guys who don't need the ball in their hand. And one of those guys that came to mind, Norman Powell.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Kiss my ass.
You don't want to send Norm to LA, huh?
Listen, Norm would love it. He's an LA guy.
Yeah.
UCLA. But I do not want anything on that Lakers team. I do not want Talen Horton-Tucker. No. He's another guy that needs the ball.
Yep.
And just, no. No. And also, Jake Layman is expecting to figure prominently into the T-Wolves plans as far as trade because of his contract value. So just
bring him back, baby.
Hey, Lele. Jay Lele.
Jay Lele. So you're super anti-THT, huh?
Yeah, I never liked that deal. I thought they talked themselves into that, and it was very stupid, and then they wouldn't pay Caruso.
I mean, they should have paid Caruso.
They didn't pay Caruso half of what he got in Chicago. That's how cheap that franchise is. I hope nothing but bad things for that franchise. Beyond like the rivalry, the cheapness of that franchise is just mind-boggling.
Well, it's something thinking about going through the Hodlinger piece, I think, is how open is Portland on Norm?
I think they're open on everybody not named Damian Lillard, legitimately.
I would hope that that's where they're mentally at, but we've said this in the years past. I know Joe is not Neil, but still.
I will say this from someone who would know. Norm did not want to come back. He did not want to come back to Portland. He was convinced to come back to Portland. And that was partly Chauncey bringing him back and throwing that extra year on there.
Well, it just didn't make sense for him, I think, from a fit standpoint.
No. And I don't think things were going well. The vibes were, remember, we talked about this in the summer a ton. The vibes coming out of last year sucked.
Yeah.
Like they sucked. They sucked something fierce.
Yeah.
So when you look at this team, if I was Norm, I'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't be about that. I wouldn't want to come back to this. But they did. They retained him. They did what they were supposed to do. But if Norm was presented with an opportunity to be a ghost, like, it's not his call ultimately, but you're not just going to shove him out the door. You don't want that as an organization. But sending him like to the Lakers, I'm sure he would probably be a fan of that.
Yeah.
Norman Powell is about the perfect player to play off of LeBron James.
Yep.
Like if you had to make one in a lab and be like, I need a guy who plays off LeBron James. A guy who's a willing cutter, who comes off screens, who knocks down shots, who's a play ender. Doesn't need the ball to do everything else. Is a passable or plus defender. Like, yeah, checks all of the boxes. They can still kiss my ass.
Is there any asset on that team?
No.
Outside of THT that you'd be interested in? No.
There's nobody on that. They can talk about Kendrick Nunn all they want. I'd just be like, I don't care.
No, Nunn doesn't do anything for this team.
I don't care.
That's what Ant's supposed to do.
Yes, exactly. Like all of the things that they talk about, it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they don't make much sense for Portland, that's for sure.
Like if you got a third team involved, we could talk. But it's just one of those situations where I don't think that's the likely scenario that's going to play out. So
it's a real feel. I texted with a buddy today and talked to him in a while that loves the Blazers, and he basically was just like, yeah, I mean, till they make a move. And I think the more we talk about this stuff, the more we kind of present these articles and these scenarios. Like it's weird. This team has all these games, and yet I think everybody's at the make a move already.
Sit back and wait.
Yeah, but I don't even think people want to wait. Like, I think there are legitimately a lot of people wondering aloud, why is there not a move been made yet? Even if the move doesn't make the most sense, even if the move isn't the move to end all moves, to make this team legitimate, I think a lot of people are they're really tired of watching this process.
It's not even like waiting on pins and needles. It's like, just get it done already. Like, rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes. Yes.
And that's kind of a weird position to be in, right?
It's not comfortable.
Because you can just do stuff that can hurt you. And I don't think Joe's going to allow that to happen. So he's willing to sit in the uncomfortable silence, as much as that sucks. Quentin Porter says, the Norm trade should never happen unless CJ got moved too. I would have just paid Gary. So there's a little bit here that we need to have some context on. Gary Trent Jr. was not going to happily re-sign in Portland unless CJ McCollum was traded. What is he doing in Toronto right now, Brandon? Is he starting? Yeah,
he starting?
Yeah, he's been starting.
I haven't watched Toronto Raptors in 3 weeks.
So, when they've been healthy, he's been starting. And he's had a real no BS role. And he wasn't behind a bunch of guys who were just eating into his touches and his shot attempts, allowing him to earn a contract sooner. So, basically, and remember who Gary's agency is, Clutch. They made a move knowing full well they weren't going to start Gary Trent Jr.
Mm-hmm.
They did not believe in him enough to be the starting two. That they didn't think that his top end was good enough, and so they traded him. That's the behind the scenes stuff that kind of falls into that. It's not always, well, why didn't they sign this guy? Well, especially when you're a young guy,
yeah,
you want your touches. You want your opportunities so that when your contracts come up, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not until you're 28, 30 years old when you go, all right, it's less about, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still about the money,
right?
But it's not about the money.
You've already had your solidified contract or two.
Yep.
Yeah.
And your next deals are not going to be vet minimums. They're going to be $20 million, $30 million. Like DeMar DeRozan's deal, like $31 million.
Right,
It wasn't
right.
It wasn't a max. But DeMar's already made his money. He wanted to go somewhere where, yeah, he was going to get his love. He was going to get his money. Don't get it twisted. But he was not going to go to a situation that wasn't conducive for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where that all kind of came from. So, and by the way, remember, they still had Gary's RFA rights. So even if somebody did offer the money, the Blazers could match it.
Couldn't match.
It was just going to piss off Clutch, and it was going to piss off Gary. So that's the situation behind that stuff. And that's not unique to Clutch, by the way. Don't get it twisted. That this kind of stuff happens all the time, especially with young players. They want their opportunities, and I don't begrudge them.
Yeah, I mean, I've already been wondering about Ant. You know,
listen, Ant's behind Dame and CJ. He's got two of the highest usage ball dominant guards in the NBA in front of him.
He's getting some minutes now because everything's gone on with CJ. But I mean, that was something to think about going in, is how he was going to approach a year.
And I'd be willing to bet that he's pretty just kind of frustrated, not only with like what's in front of him, but his performance recently. His last 8 games, he struggled. But even with CJ out, he was not getting the burn where he was allowed to go be himself. And his role just kind of keeps changing and changing and changing and changing and changing. And if there's one thing that Ant has shown early in his career, is that he struggles when his role changes. When he has that continuity, that's when he's his best. And I think he's in his own head right now. That if I ever have a criticism of Ant, is that he gets in his own head.
Mm-hmm.
That the thing that holds him back is not his talent, is not his skill. It is his head, and like how he navigates these things. And it's not easy. Most guys can't navigate that stuff. The guys that can, those are the elite guys. Like Damian Lillard coming from a small school and having that chip on his shoulder and going to Weber State and taking on a new style of play, like having an offense built around him and like developing that stuff. That's what made him good. 99% of the guys in the league can't do that. And that's not to say that those other guys are bad, but those are the rare cases. Ant's, to me, he's a no BS sixth man in his career or a very solid starter.
Yeah.
But on a team that has roles that make more sense. Like if you've got a Kyle Lowry at the 1 and Ant is your 2, that makes sense. The diversification of roles. But now he's being cast as like sometimes a forward, sometimes just an off-ball guy. Sometimes he's being told to, hey, go run the offense. And those aren't the things that he does. He is a certified bucket-getting monster. And I thought against the Jazz last night, I thought he was really good as far as getting to his spots. He just didn't hit his shots.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that's just a bad shooting night or if that's just I'm still not meant or physically right after tweaking my ankle, or if it's just a bad night, or if he's in his own head. Like there's so many different things that can kind of be built around that. Eduardo says Ant needs a Jordan Clarkson role. Yeah, I don't disagree, but I also think he can be a starter if you've got like the right kind of guards paired around him.
Yeah. What do you think about Utah Hollinger putting Ingles out there? I thought that was interesting.
I did too.
Because that seems like a move Utah should not make.
So, and the first line that Hollinger has in here is Joe Ingles is likely too important to Utah's culture, not to mention its forward rotation.
Yeah.
The Jazz's search for upgrade likely centers on using Joe Ingles' expiring deal and its next available first-round pick. And that's to return a starting caliber big wing. Like, here's the thing. The Utah Jazz are big as shit. But they are not big in the backcourt, and they are not consistently big at the wing spot.
Right. Yeah, what's Royce O'Neal?
6'5".
6'5", yeah.
He just plays he's like GP2. He just plays bigger. Joe is a legit 6'8", but he has lost a step. He's still smart as hell.
Mm-hmm.
He knows his angles, but he does not have the foot speed defensively. And Bojan is, again, big as hell, but not the stopper that they need. Like, if we talked about this last night with Joe, whether or not you buy Utah. And I think a lot of the reason people don't buy Utah as a no BS contender is because they don't have an apex wing. That is what they're missing. They're a phenomenal offense. A lot of guys who can handle and create. some knockdown shooters, and they are big as shit in the front court. They have two viable centers who can just eat you alive with production. Mm-hmm. We have all the Hassan Whiteside memes. Joe or Brandon, I almost called you Joe. Jesus. I have him on one damn time, and all of a sudden I'm reverting back to old habits.
I know, man. We're going back to the old days. I can't believe you just called out your mistress's name like that.
Just
right
mid-climax.
Our lovemaking.
Good
right
Lord.
In the middle. Right in the middle. Who does that?
Me. I do. I'm the shitty
What is it,
husband.
Dirt? What do you want to say?
Yeah, exactly. Hassan played 19 minutes and had 15 and 11.
Jeez.
He's a production monster.
He is a production monster.
Like, in the regular season, he will just eat
He's
up.
a stat stuffer, though, man. We know that.
But, I mean, that does matter. Like, if Hassan Whiteside is coming off the bench, you're probably doing pretty well in the front court.
Yeah.
That's what I always said. Like, if Yusuf Nurkic was healthy and Hassan Whiteside was coming in, like, you're just big as hell. It just makes stuff like Hassan Whiteside going up against bench centers. He gonna eat.
That's an advantage.
He gonna eat. Let me tell you right now.
Man, we got to stop making you laugh.
Yeah, it's really laughing does make me cough. It's actually quite awful. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that the Jazz are kind of in. An interesting possibility and somebody I've always loved. And Hollinger mentions him, and he knows him quite well as a former employee of the Memphis Grizzlies. Kyle Anderson.
Slow-mo, baby.
Slow-mo is a good player and offers Portland basically everything that they need.
Yes.
Shot creator, three-point shooter, size, legit playmaker. Like, he's like your tier 3 guy in that regard. If you go check my tweet history of like the last 4 years, my offseason notes, like, Kyle Anderson. Like, him and Aaron Gordon always popped up as guys. I was like, yep, those are two guys that would very much accentuate what Damian Lillard does.
So him and Rocco, that would work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he's at 9.6, 9.7?
Yep.
Hmm.
Would it take a little bit more?
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you willing to pay that much more? Because I think his deal is expiring, I believe. I think he's also expiring. Let me double check it.
Yeah, he expires in 22.
So.
Yeah. 9.9. He's almost 10. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I think it's tough. Portland has to balance a couple things here, Danny. They have to balance how much talent do you want to retain and carry over? How much flexibility do you want during the summer in terms of roster availability? And then also, you take on a guy like Slow-Mo, I won't argue with you that he would probably work really well with Dame, but I would also respond with, I also don't think he's changing anything.
No,
right? Like,
you're moving deck chairs around to make things fit better.
The way that we talked about Larry last night, that happens in a lot of teams in this league. Is these are good players, but there's only so many true difference makers.
Yep.
That you could bring Slow-Mo in, but you're probably going to lose him.
Or you retain him with his bird rights.
Or you could, okay, so you got the bird rights.
You're making that move with that assumption, I believe.
What are you going to have to pay him?
Probably right around the same. Yeah. Right around 12. I think that's probably a spot that you land in.
A 28-year-old who plays like he's 38.
Hey, but he's played like he's 38 his whole career.
That's very true.
So we are not Kyle Anderson slanderers here. But again, that's the move to get them under the luxury tax.
Right.
And everybody wants the big move. I want the big move. You want the big move. Everybody in the chat, you all want the big move. Guess what has to happen no matter what? They have to get under the tax. And I don't want to talk about who cares about billionaires saving money? The owner of the bleeping team does. They are not going to pay $3.50 for every dollar for this roster. There is no way in hell. None. So, if you want to know who cares, ownership. And as much as that sucks, that's what's going to happen. It was always going to happen. That's what really sucks. Where Beach Fan says, might have missed this earlier, but is there any movement on a GM search? I just can't see the logic of putting this franchise's future in the hands of Joe Cronin.
Well, it might be Joe Cronin.
Yeah, and I can actually see the logic in it. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I'll kind of lay this out there. Joe is very well respected by talent evaluators. As I've made phone calls over the last couple months, he is not an idiot. Like there are idiots in the NBA that run teams or are near the tops of running teams. Don't get it twisted. Joe is not one of them. So when you look at that alone, that's a boon. He's a solid talent evaluator. He's a salary cap whiz. Those things matter. Being creative in a market where you're not a desirable place to go to, you need to navigate through two things: the draft and trades. Because free agency is not how you're going to land talent. No. So that creativity matters. And you want to talk about a guy who understands the nuance of Portland, a guy that has been in the organization for 16 years. I don't know how many people understand this. When GMs leave, typically their staffs go with them or go to another team or they get fired. For Joe to live through every GM since 2006 tells you he's good at his job, he's well-liked, he's well-respected. Those things matter. So he understands the inner workings of Portland and the organization and the players that come and go through here. He understands ownership group. He's been around the Vulcans for 16 years.
That's the part that worries me a little bit.
It's definitely something that's worrisome.
He knows that they're cheap. I mean, if he's learned anything in 16 years, especially now with a new regime of it.
Yes, the new regime in particular.
It's, you talk about not wanting to pay the tax on this roster. Totally get it. It's a bad team. Wouldn't be worth the money. Is there a roster, though, that they would be willing to pay the tax? I feel like we're being told this every year, and then they're always trying to cut the tax. And I get it. They haven't achieved X and Y, but there's elements of him that I like. I think everything you're hitting on are things that I like. And then there's the other part of me that can't help but say, are you losing out on the next great? Are you losing out on Masai 2.0? Are you missing out on?
But those guys aren't taking this job. And that's what I was going to get to next, is that...
Well, what about the dude in Chicago?
Again, what did we just say?
Eversley.
Yes. Is this organization cheap?
They are.
Okay. I don't know if they'd be willing to pay the necessary tax, so to speak, to get Eversley out of there. And even then, does Eversley want to take this job knowing full well of what is ahead of him?
Depends how he views it. If he views Dame is leaving, then I could see why he wouldn't want to. If he views it as a fresh restart rebuild with Dame, it's pretty enticing.
It's enticing, but it definitely comes with risks.
It absolutely comes with risks. But I feel like when those dudes are good at their job, they're good at their job.
But is he coming in with his hands tied? And those are the questions you're looking at, like,
But that doesn't make... Okay, now, to your point, that might be accurate. That doesn't make me more comfortable about hiring Joe. That actually makes me more worrisome that they're just falling to the cheapest, hands are already tied, we don't pay the tax in this city guy. And that doesn't leave me hopeful that he's going to be able to create that special team with all those limitations.
Do you want the guy that knows his hands are tied and is already trying to be creative? Or do you want the guy who's going to bang his head against the wall over and over and over again and be told no?
I mean, truthfully, I would want them to hire the best person and not let money get in the way of this. But
I don't think that's going to be a reality right now.
I know, and I think that's the unfortunate thing that we need to maybe accept is this team is they're not showing right now that they're willing to do that. This is not Paul. Paul was willing to pay whatever if it meant that his team was going to get better, and we've lost that. And so that's the unfortunate part of the situation is it's being left up to Burt Cole, who's not even technically the owner.
So again, I've become more comfortable with Joe because of the people that I have talked to that I have trust tell me how capable he is.
He seems well liked, which is great.
That is not a trait that is very common at the top in the NBA.
No, it is not.
And so that gives me like, if he's that well liked, like guys that are well liked are typically pretty damn successful. Presti, Morey,
Myers, yeah.
Buford.
Yep.
Like the guys that are pretty well liked, are pretty damn well respected. Those are the ones that get deals done.
Right.
Arturis in Chicago now.
Yep.
Ty Conley in Denver. Like, look at the successful teams that get stuff done. And you will typically find a GM who has very good relationships, is very well respected, and they operate in the margins and on the big swings. And what did Joe say? What was the first thing basically that he said is that we are not going to be risk averse. Now, it's one thing to say that.
Yeah.
That I'm damn near certain that whoever works in PR there was like, well, this line needs to get thrown in there because Neil constantly sold, we're not going to be risky.
Yep.
We need to show full out that we are going to be the anti-Neils, which means we are going to be personal, we are not going to be assholes in the press conference, and we are going to say that we're not going to talk about how free agents can't come here and we can't get deals done. We're going to talk about how we're on the other side of that. And I think that was something that came out of that press conference that really rang true as far as like what they were talking about on both the basketball and the business sides. Will they do it? I don't know.
Do you feel like they should have brought Danny in as a consultant to make the hire?
No, because Utah was always going to keep him.
Yeah.
You and I talked about that.
I know.
It was one of those things where like they could have if they backed up the Brinks truck, but even then I think Danny's just happy being back in Utah. And again, we had good God, I'm blanking on his name from the Celtics on when you were out that night.
Who did you end up going with?
Good Lord God Almighty, he's gonna kill me for getting his damn name. I'm gonna blame the cold on it right now.
That's okay.
John Corrales.
Oh, John Corrales. Okay.
From Locked on Celtics and Locked on NBA, and he basically said, "Listen, man, Danny has had 2 heart attacks. He gets to fly back and forth between Boston and Utah right now, throw on his Celtics gear, yuck it up a little bit, go golfing in Utah with his fellas." Live in a Mormon community as a devout Mormon.
I think his kid lives there, right?
Yes, and then you've also got like he gets to be kind of an advisor to the Jazz and yuck it up with Dwayne Wade and Zanuck and the new ownership group. Like, there's no reason for him to come to this hell pit that Portland is currently cooking.
Right.
Like, where would you rather be? An
Not
organization
Portland.
that has their shit together, or in Portland?
Well, I mean, I think it's totally fair. Because you're still in the interim situation here, I think it's fair to wonder aloud, where does this job rank in terms of desirability around the league?
I think it's very low.
If
every job
like
was open right now,
yes,
this would be a bottom 3rd job.
Of the jobs that'll be available, it's probably still at the bottom, right?
Yes. And not because it's Portland, but because of the current situation, because of ownership, because of the roster construction, because of the salary cap. Joe lied through his teeth when he talked about how clean their books were. Their books are not clean. Their books are not clean. They're still paying the ghost of what the hell's his name? Andrew Nicholson.
Festus Ezeli? Andrew Nicholson?
Festus has fallen off. Nicholson's got another 2 years.
Didn't they just stop paying Andy Varejao?
Yeah, and Andy Varejao fell off. They had almost $7 million a year committed to those 3. The dumbest timeline possible. God, I hated that man. Not Varejao, Neil. It's just, it's a weird place. It's very, very frustrating. Owen Canaway says, is it possible we can get Kyle Kuzma on this team? You could have gotten him maybe in the offseason before he got traded, obviously, to the Wizards for the Westbrook deal. That might have been an option.
Yeah, possibly.
You may have been able to flip McCollum for that package. KCP, Kuzma, and Montrez.
KCP, Montrez, yeah.
Which
you could do worse.
Like if you told me that package was on the table right now, I'd be like,
oh, you'd take it.
That ain't bad.
I think you'd have to take it.
That ain't bad.
That's a tough thing to reading about that Hollinger piece, reading all these trade scenarios now. It's just like I'm not seeing. He
doesn't have CJ McCollum in his top 8.
Which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that dude's pretty plugged in. To not have CJ on there feels like a huge omission.
I was gonna get to it later, but let's get to it now.
He's casually, passively thrown into the Simmons stuff.
Yeah. So, how likely do you think that CJ McCollum ends up on this team after the deadline?
I've been wondering this for the last couple of weeks, and I know we haven't done a pod, but I asked you yesterday. I'm not convinced that we've not seen CJ ever again. I think if you told me he played the rest of the year in a uniform, I wouldn't be shocked.
Which is insane.
Well, we do this every year. And look, this is the one, fair or not, Joe will be allowed to prove idiots like me wrong. This is another part in my brain when I think about the situation. How much of CJ not being dealt was an internal discussion between 3 or 4 people. It could have just been solely Neil. And you could say, no, I know it's Neil. And I'll believe you. But if you told me Joe Cronin was in those offices too during those conversations, was like, well, CJ's got value. This organization loves CJ McCollum. We know that. Yeah. That is abundantly clear. I don't know if it was just simply Neil and nobody else. So if you told me he was on the rest of the year,
there were early reports that Dame did not want CJ dealt early in his career. Year 5, year 6. I have been told for at least 3, probably 4 years that those sentiments were no longer around. I've also been told that CJ McCollum himself thought he should be dealt within the last couple of years. So, I don't know where I sit.
Teams would rather have Norm, Danny, than CJ.
Yes, unequivocally.
It's not even, yeah. It's not close.
And the only thing is, and that's because as valuable as shot creation is, as valuable as it is, there's so many good shot creators out there right now that make much less money than CJ that it's like, we can take a lesser version.
That second extension, I'll never forget where I was when I found that out, and I just was like,
they gave it to him. They gave him that extra money that they didn't have to give him, and they gave it to him a year early.
Yep.
That was the frustration.
That right there was like the move of moves to not make in that moment, and they made it.
I don't think I'm ever going to ban anything from the chat other than like really, really, really racist things. But people talking about the team getting moved, I think I might actually ban from the chat. For the love of God, this team is never getting moved. Ever. Forever. Get it out of your ever-loving minds. This team is never getting moved.
Yeah.
It is not. The league is expanding. The only teams that will be moved are teams that have been dog shit in their markets for a decade.
Minnesota, New Orleans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Markets that have NFL franchises.
Yeah, but hell, Sacramento came close 2 different times.
That
and
again
was like, nope.
But what ended up happening over that was the league was like, nah, the fan base is way too loyal. Yeah. Seattle came out and said, I dare you to move. And they went,
Seattle
bet?
Puffed their chest out. Yeah.
Yeah, they puffed their chest. That's what happened.
Yeah, they pissed David Stern off.
Yes. And David Stern was like, oh, fuck me? I'm pussy? Go ahead, Clay. Take him to the middle of nowhere and piss everybody off. That's how that went. Let me give you guys the business breakdown of this stuff, because this I don't think everybody knows how this stuff works. Expansion gets the league a truckload of money. When the league expands, Jody Allen probably stands to earning between $150 and $200 million between the expansion fees that are paid to the NBA ownership group,
$1 billion,
and the TV rights deals. Because the teams are going to go into Seattle and they're going into Las Vegas. Las Vegas is divided by, I think, between like 8 different teams. All of the California teams, Phoenix, Portland, and Utah, I think all have TV rights in Las Vegas. As weird as that is. Portland owns from here to the top of Alaska. Those TV rights deals are going to be worth a truckload to Jody Allen. moving the team would cost the Portland ownership group probably $500 million.
Yeah.
There is no way in hell this team is getting moved.
Well, and I mean, for all of those two, let's not overlook the fact that selling tickets still counts for that league, and Portland sells as good as tickets.
It's a mill.
Never stops.
Even in a COVID year, they turned a profit.
Yep.
It is a money printing machine. This franchise is never leaving Portland. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. Somebody says, why Vegas? Wouldn't the team need to go into the Eastern Conference? No,
Vegas is getting a team.
Vegas is getting a team.
That's happening.
Memphis or Houston or Minnesota or one of those teams that's right there on the Mississippi would get moved into the East.
Yeah.
That's how that would go.
Put Minnesota in the East.
I mean, realistically, they should be because with all the, the Ohio Valley teams right there.
Mm-hmm.
And Joey says, and that's what she's waiting for so she can cash out once the NBA expands. Yes.
Which I hate.
I mean, I get it.
I hate it.
I hate it. I do. But she stands because, as it's been explained to me, and I can't confirm this because I can't see the legal documents, the way that Paul Allen's trust is put together is that Jody Allen and anybody else who's listed would not stand to gain from the sale of the team. However, revenue through other means, merchandise, sponsorships, ticket sales, that is theirs, which would also include expansion fees.
Yeah.
So if you know that you're not going to get any of the $2.5 billion from selling either the Seahawks or the Blazers, Seahawks is probably worth closer to $4 billion.
She's not going to get any of that.
As far as I know, the proceeds of those franchises.
That's interesting.
Is tied into the trust, and that trust is supposed to be given to charity. That's my understanding from somebody I know who has seen it. So take that for what it's worth. Then
she'd be stupid to ever sell the Seattle Seahawks.
Because again, what is it? A money printing.
It's a money making machine.
So
you don't sell an NFL team. NBA team, sure. NFL, no.
Which is why I think we've heard so much over the last 2 years, about the Blazers being up for sale. Have you heard a peep about the Seahawks ever?
Nope.
So, it's a very, very interesting thing to see how it all plays out. It's very, 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 very intricate in how this all works out. But the bottom line is the Portland Trailblazers are never leaving Portland. Never. Like, just get that idea that this whole little brother paranoia that Portland has with Seattle over so much stuff doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Well, what if they're not moving the team? They are never moving this team. It's just not going to happen. It's just, it's very weird. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I mean, you don't want to lose something you love.
No, and I get it, but you also don't need to project that that's going to be a thing. You don't need to worry about it.
Well, but there's some people I can't blame. I mean, you watched a rival in a bigger city lose their team to Oklahoma City,
which is objectively hilarious.
I mean, when you see that happen, you're just like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm a Raiders fan, dude.
I've never bought into it, but
I grew up in L.A. when the Raiders were in L.A.
Yeah.
And then I watched them go to Oakland, and I was like, well, that sucks.
They're still the Raiders, though.
Yeah. And it was like, what, did you lose your fandom when they went to Oakland? I'm like, no. Did you lose their fandom when they went to Vegas? And I was like, no, I became a bigger fan because I'm definitely more likely to go to Las Vegas than I am to Oakland.
Yeah.
Go to shitty O.co arena.
Oh.
Or go to the Big Roomba.
Maybe get robbed outside of Oakland or go to the Strip.
I really need to stop laughing.
Yeah, it's okay.
I found that a little diet cream soda does a little justice on the vocal cords.
A little diet cream soda. Cream soda's underrated.
It's just like that soft feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you drink some cream soda, this
I know,
creaminess.
Yeah.
It's It's wonderful. It's a weird thing, man. And Bear, Danny, are either of you on the trade Dame movement if he hasn't requested one? Well, you go ahead and go here first, Brandon.
No. I've had some people tell me, push back against it and say, well, he's going to make X and Y and he's on the other side of his prime. And, I get it. This year's been real tough. Dame is clearly banged up. Dame needs surgery. He didn't really have an offseason. It's been a hellacious year for him physically. I don't really care that he's going to be 31, 32. You have a bona fide top 12 NBA player on your team that wants to, at least publicly so far, remain committed to your organization and help steer them back to winning. Those don't fall in your lap. Like the crowd that wants to trade Dame and get 5 draft picks back, and we'll restart. Dame's old. We shuffle everything. Okay, cool. Good luck hitting on those draft picks. Ask Philadelphia, who trusted the process. They hit exactly 1.5 times. I'd say 2, but the guy doesn't even want to play there anymore. Yeah. And ask Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics. They got some good players, but what happened to them? They kept hitting a wall. They couldn't build past hitting on a couple of those picks. It's not a given that you're going to get a Damian Lillard again. In fact, it could be more likely that you become Minnesota or Orlando, more so than becoming Dallas or the Clippers or whatever. So no. And by the way, for 7 years, I had to watch that general manager take that team and just throw it against a wall and hope that the new crap that he added
roll the same ball back out.
And I'm not doing that. Damian Lillard deserves a year or 2 of the organization going all in and doing what they can to build around him and trying to win. And if it doesn't work, cool. I'll live with them trying. And then Dame's 34 and says, I want to go win a ring with somebody. Okay, here you go. You do not trade Damian Lillard yet.
No. You don't trade Damian Lillard because if you want to be a little bit nostalgic, if you want to change the break, the greatest Trailblazers ever have all left. Bill Walton left pissed off. Clyde Drexler left pissed off. LaMarcus Aldridge left pissed off. Don't you want to try to change that? For once? There isn't a franchise player that is like on good terms with this franchise. Isn't that kind of messed up?
I mean, their biggest one is Terry Porter, but you wouldn't put him in that category.
He's not on the Mount Rushmore. The Mount Rushmore is Bill, Clyde, Dame, LaMarcus. Those are the 4 best players this franchise has ever had. As far as the dudes.
Hell,
Brandon would have been on it, and Brandon left in a bad way. Yes. So much so that Paul Allen had an axe to grind against him and didn't want him back in the building.
Yep.
So literally, every generational players, every single one of them left in bad terms. Don't you want to try to change that for once? If Dame forces his way out and you did what you needed to do in the Joe Cronin years, then you let Dame do it.
You shrug your shoulders and say, this is what it is.
I will say this right now. Neil fucked Damian Lillard for a decade. Flat out. Flat out. He did not have the balls to make a move that made sense.
Nope.
Not once.
Always cowered out.
And if Dame did this for 10 years, a whole ass decade, and he decided this summer, nah, and he goes full nuclear and he goes toxic and James Harden and forces his way out, I would not blame him. I wouldn't be happy about it.
Right.
But I would not blame him. He has been about as loyal as you could possibly imagine. Imagine any other star in the league doing what Damian Lillard did.
Oh, it's rare. I mean, it's rare on multiple accounts, man. Like the
Giannis is the
ability,
only one.
The ability to not only stay committed and loyal to your market that's not highly regarded by a lot of people around the league, just in the terms of, career viability. Stayed out of the coaching stuff? Stayed out of the front office stuff? Like, did he advocate for his dudes? Sure.
Yes. If you want to say there's a negative thing about Damian Lillard is that he wanted every single person he ever played with to get paid.
But Dame is in a position in this modern era of basketball where he could have easily every year say, rebuild this shit. This is not acceptable. Losing in the first round, not okay. He should have. I mean, you could make it argument he could have done it.
He should have
done it this year. But he's a very rare cat in the, I got my role, my job, and I'm going to trust you to do your role, your job. Now, he's always talked about he enjoys the collaboration process. If Neil or whoever has an idea of roster changes, but he's a very rare breed in the he doesn't overstep what he is. And you can make an argument for whether that's good or bad. I
for sure
totally
brings up a good point.
it.
Dirk Nowitzki is the other guy. Dirk is the other guy.
Dirk's a good one too.
Who just stuck
out
through
of it. That's a really good
Listen,
point.
I'll take a pay cut. You bring some guys in. I'll trust you. He did that after he got his title.
Yeah.
I look at this and I go, and where Beach fan says Dame is nowhere near Dirk. Here's the thing. And for all the people who say that Dame is nowhere near Clyde, Dirk and Clyde had a lot more around them than Dame has ever had. The one team that Damian Lillard has had was a Wes Matthews Achilles injury away from probably being a Western Conference Finals team, and not the 2019 stumble into it, but a good team.
The problem I have, because we do have this in our market, is there is a percentage. I don't know how high that is. There's a percentage of people that do find ways to knock Dame.
Sure.
And what I would say to that crowd, he's not a perfect player. Folks, I'm not telling you this is Mr. All-NBA defensive player. Like this dude has things that he's not as strong in as others, no doubt. But ask yourself this. Name a team that's wanted Dame. Philadelphia. How would you feel as a Blazer fan, and how do you think Philadelphia fan would react if you found out Dame was going with Joel Embiid? You'd probably think, oh, shit. Right?
That's a title team.
That's a title team. How would you feel if Dame got sent to the Lakers? Whoa, shit.
AD and Braun absolutely, unequivocally pulled him down to L.A. this summer.
I'm just, if you're answering with the same reaction, because I would have reactions like both of those. I'd be like, oh, shit, Boston with Tatum. Oh, shit. Yeah. If that's your reaction, that tells you the quality of talent that you have. And to stop acting that because he hasn't dragged this team to a finals or multiple Western Conference finals with this roster, that it somehow knocks down what we have clearly seen. No, this dude is the real article, man. This guy had the most efficient playoff game I've ever watched in my life, and his team didn't win. And to me, you can knock a player, but man, you got to look around the parts. That's why I don't knock LeBron for losing in 2007. The hell, he took that team to the
finals.
Like, come on, that in itself is almost worth a championship when we talk about this stuff. So put this in context, folks. It's not that he's a perfect player. It's just more so who has been alongside him that makes you go, oh, shit. Because if he went to 4 or 5 other teams, you'd probably say, oh, shit, Damian Lillard's playing with that guy? Okay.
There's some people in here that are saying that if Dame went to those situations, he'd be the number 2. No, he wouldn't. I'm telling you right now, if he ends up in Philadelphia, that ball is in Damian Lillard's hands more than Joel Embiid's.
I don't know. I look, if it's Joel at the end of the game, whatever. But to me, that doesn't matter. Dame he's a chameleon enough where it won't matter. Dame's role will be Dame's role. And whoever the other star that he's playing with, Brad Beal, Jason Tatum, Joel
Dame has
Embiid,
played with one star ever.
And he was a young pup.
And guess what? It was the best pick and roll combo in the entire NBA. It was probably the best 2-man game in the entire league, and Dame was in year 4.
I think we play that game too much too, and I think players are starting to show us this, right? Like, obviously, there's franchise guys. There's on some instances there's 1s and there's 2s. But if the Miami Heat are in the championship and Jimmy Butler hits a game winner, and then the next game Kyle Lowry hits a game winner, and then the next game Tyler Hero hits a game winner, like, to me, it's just about the roles and how selfless can you be as a star to adapt and just fit in and say, who gives a shit who hits the shot or shoots the shot? Let's just make the shot.
And Dame has shown with CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
If CJ's cooking, what does Dame do? He defers.
Game 7 Denver. He was like, bro, this is your moment. Like, you're cooking. I don't have it. Like, take us. Let's go.
And that's the thing. I think it gets lost. And this is what pisses me off about the O'Shea era. Is that he did not give Damian Lillard the help that he deserved. He didn't give him Paul George when he could have. He didn't give him James Harden when he could have. He didn't give him an opportunity at a Chris Middleton even.
Or Kawhi.
He never, ever gave him room.
Yeah.
Was always my biggest frustration, is that he never, ever, ever, ever gave him that opportunity. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. You know, you just look at that and you go, you really believe CJ McCollum was that dude? And that isn't like the besmirch CJ McCollum. I've come to this conclusion that CJ McCollum,
that was the best fit. Like, it's not even about CJ.
Yeah.
Like, that was really what you thought was the best fit to actually win at the top level with this dude, is a guy that's basically a less than duplicate.
Jordan Johnson says, you know, it's serious when Danny starts to whisper. I'm not whispering. My voice is just fading with each and every word. It's
guys.
Yeah. My NPR voice is not coming out on purpose. It's just my voice is entirely cooked. But yeah, the Vulcans would not let him. No, Double E, no, that's entirely wrong. Neil O'Shea would not let him.
He had power. He had power.
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
I would very much step off that cliff that you're on right now, because you're about to take 2 steps off it. Neil messed up multiple times.
Yes.
I've got it on up the highest authority on what transactions could and could not have taken place.
Danny, I mean, as many transactions that he screwed up, I mean, there really isn't one. There isn't. But I will always go back in my brain, and I understand that it may not have been like the top best player available even.
But 2017.
But I just wonder, like, if Bam plays with Dame and CJ,
what that does to unlock things.
What it can present, what Terry could have maybe been able to figure out offensively, and then like what
or John
Bam
Collins
is defensively, or John Collins even, you know,
or OG to play the Scotty Barnes role.
Whatever yeah, I mean, any one of those dudes,
literally anybody other than Zach.
He might have been able to salvage and run with the "I told you morons" Dame CJ would work, because I found the perfect filler for it.
Or Beach fan says, is that Pritchard Indy story bullshit? I don't know which one you're talking about. If you're talking about Kevin Pritchard not wanting to do anything, yes, with Portland. But
he hated.
But Paul George was also still going to get Danny. Not if Blazers could have had Paul George. They could have. Multiple times.
They refused to put CJ in the trade.
Yeah. Multiple times. Unequivocally. Multiple times. So it's hate to be the bearer of bad news if you're just now hearing that for the first time. But yes, they could have. So they refused to put CJ in anything in there. It's just it's very, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
The different paths they could have taken over the years. It's very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. So and that's was always the MO, was that Neil kept trying to keep Dame and CJ and bring in a third guy. And it was like, but your second guy isn't good enough to be the second guy right now. You need the second guy first.
Yeah.
You don't hold on to the third guy to make sure that you can get the second. You use the third guy to get the second guy, and then you figure out a new third guy. Because guess what's easier to get in this league? A third guy.
A third guy, yeah.
The second guy, the first guy's the hardest. The second guy's the next hardest. That's why they're 1, 2, and 3. And it was always, it made me want to put my head through a wall. It was just like, it's very, very frustrating. I'd love to have Neil explain what he thought CJ McCollum could be. His shiny trophy. because people in the league know that Damian Lillard was not his pick. That isn't his claim to fame. His claim to fame is he drafted a 4-year guy out of Lehigh in CJ McCollum who's a good player. Yeah. And he could carry that around in his pocket and show it to everybody.
Well, it's still, I mean, that draft in itself just odd in that sense.
That draft sucked.
Overall. It did. Yeah. I mean, it ended up having the best player was drafted, 13th in that draft, or 15th. I don't remember when Giannis was taken, but it's just one of those, like, even then, CJ's been good, but how did you have a 6'1" point guard and you thought, I need a 6'3" point guard? I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, listen to that draft. Listen to this draft.
That draft is drunk when you go back and look at it. It's
so bad. Anthony Bennett, Depot, Otto Porter Jr., Cody Zeller, Alex Len, Nerlens Noel, Ben McLemore, KCP, Trey Burke, CJ. Yeah. That is your top 10. And look at this. Here's the thing.
I loved McLemore. Loved him. I was like, this dude's legit going to be a great 2, and it just never worked out.
Neil always went back to his guys.
Yep.
For those that aren't aware, the Blazers were very dumb, and they let a camera crew take a bunch of pictures, and they didn't scrub them before they went up on a website in 2013. That showed the Trailblazers draft board. CJ McCollum was their number 1. Cody Zeller was their number 2 in that draft.
Yeah.
And if you look at the names on here, guess who's on here who has been linked to the Portland Trailblazers? Has Otto Porter Jr. ever been linked with the Portland Trailblazers?
Yeah.
Nerlens Noel.
Yep.
Ben McLemore is currently on the team.
He's on the team.
CJ McCollum.
Yes.
Kelly Olynyk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Tony Snell, currently on the team. Mason Plumlee, currently on the team. Reggie Bullock. Alan Crabb.
Yeah, oh, man. Let's pay that guy.
I mean, he had his dudes, and he stuck to those dudes.
Yes, he did.
And he never, because he was never wrong, because his draft evaluations were never wrong. It's just...
I mean, folks, I mean, I just, it does feel like we've gotten to this point a lot, but like, it reiterates again, I am not a prophet. Danny is not a prophet, but like, this is why so many of us were like, this.
I've been screaming this from the mountaintops for literally 7+ years.
We're taking this thing the wrong direction the last 3 years. It was evident, and it was just nobody. And then we'd fall for it. We get, just fall right back into it, man. Oh, they won 6 of 8. Oh, man. Did you see them? They beat the Heat.
Just reel them back in. Yeah, just fish hook you right back in every single time.
They're legit contenders. Wait, we lost the Nuggets in 6 games without Jamal Murray and Will Barton? The hell?
Yeah. So, and somebody says, yes, the bad man is gone. Yes, the boogeyman is gone. But for everybody hoping that this is going to be a painless process, it's going to be painful.
This is the blip correction from the Avengers.
Yeah.
It's nice that we have everybody back, but there's an absolute disaster.
Yeah, trying to fix this is going to suck.
Yes.
And it's probably not solvable between now and the deadline.
No, not in the deadline. No.
And
this is going to be in the summer. We're going to have to be patient.
They basically have until draft.
Yep.
Because CJ can't be on this roster next season. He just cannot.
No.
Like, I have said this for literally 5, maybe 6 years and meant it, but now it's like, no bleeping way. He cannot be on this team next year. Financially, structurally, none of it makes sense. And none of that has to do with CJ McCollum. None of it. It's just fit. It has run its course, dog. It is. You gotta go.
No other tandem in the league would be allowed to go that long with that little of success.
It would literally be 10 years.
Yes.
It's got to go.
Yeah.
And this is where we get to the part where I say, Repeat Fan says, I need you to spill everything you ever heard about Olshey. I can't do that. We don't have the time, nor will I have any friends left because, no. I have reached the point of like, should they, could they, would they? They need to tank. Unequivocally, without remorse, they need to soft reset.
Yes, they do.
I have reached that point of no return of like, are they going to be bad enough to just like be like tanky? Like they don't need to be like quote unquote tank, maybe, but I think they need to ensure it.
I think you need to take into account how good a pick do you think this team can get? If you think that pick is good,
they have a 10% chance of the number one pick right now.
Okay, so if they hover,
what is it? Is it 12.5 or 15%? I think is the number is the overall best odds.
I think it's
well, it's
split three ways. Anyways, if you believe that's where they're going to hover and stay, you have to tell yourself two things. You're either looking at one of these young prized assets who could do wonders for your team in a year, or what team currently with a star may end up with such a disappointing season that they say, that's a great position to be in. Let us use this, some filler, and there you go. Is Karl Anthony Towns gettable, is what I'm throwing out. If your pick is good enough, you've got Anthony Edwards, you pivot off that. Like, I'm not saying Portland's number one even for him. I'm just like, you have to start exploring these avenues and being honest. It's not worth losing that pick. Losing in the play-in tournament or losing in the first round in 4 games does you nothing. Jack, zip, you need the draft pick.
So your top 5 picks right now, just kind of going through Tankathon. I think this is kind of where I was going to settle in. There might be a few changes, whether it's Kendall Brown or Patrick Baldwin moving up. But Jabari Smith is hands down the number 1 overall pick right now. I don't think that's going to change. His offensive game, his ability to, he looks like Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
he's that scary offensively. Chet Holmgren is probably the best defensive player in the draft right now. His rim protection ability is different. I'm not entirely sure about his offensive game yet. I'm not sure about that yet.
I'm not sold on his physical stature in the NBA.
I'm less worried about that in today's NBA.
See, and for what he would probably be asked to be,
he's gonna be asked to be Tyson Chandler. And remember Tyson? Right. Remember when Tyson came in the league?
He was skinny.
He was a rail.
But Danny, I think this dude's skinnier than Kevin Durant.
Yo, he is.
This dude is a stick.
Yeah, he's 7 foot, 200 pounds.
Yeah.
But I think in today's NBA you can do that. And he's not a stiff. He's not Porzingis. No. He's a fluid athlete. And so when I had Bol at Hoop Summit, I was terrified with every single step he took. His ankles pronated so much in every step they looked like they were going to snap.
Yeah.
And his father, obviously, Manute, had so many foot and ankle issues. I was like, nope. Chet is a unicorn in the sense of a physical profile, in that he looks like he's stable, like Kevin Durant, which is very rare and very unique. And the fact that he is so lithe, that he is so light, might actually be beneficial to his career because he's not carrying that additional weight. But I'm still not sure about the offensive upside. Paolo Banchero is a truck. 6'10", every last bit of 250 pounds.
I've really liked that kid.
He looked better than Chet. He looked more ready than Chet in their matchup. But Paolo also said the same thing. Chet is that dude when it comes to rim protection. I think I'm paraphrasing. He said, listen, I had layups that I would normally get, but he was just not having it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lesser, he says Chet is slow. Chet's not slow. He is not slow. He moves very well. Very, very well for his size. Not even for his size, just very well. Next is Jaden Ivey, who's a point guard. He's the best point guard in the draft. They have him listed as a 2, but he's the best creator in the draft. Jalen Duren, that's the freshman at Memphis, who's another 6'11", 250-pound dude. More traditional, less fluid than Jabari, Chet, or Paolo.
Yeah.
And then you look at it, another 6'10" guy in Patrick Baldwin at Milwaukee, and Kendall Brown at Baylor, who is beat the ever-loving shit out of the Ducks the other day.
Yeah.
Good God. He embarrassed that entire team. He looked incredible in that game. But again, that's your top 7. So 6 of the top 7 are 6'8", 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot, and 6'10". If there was ever a draft that Portland needed to get a top 4 guy,
Yep.
this is it. This is it. Because you need no BS, legitimate size. And right now, so it's 14%. I couldn't remember where it was in the top 3.
Okay.
So it's for the top 3, it's 14%. Number 4 is 12.5. Number 5 is 10.5. And number 6, where Portland currently is, percentage points out, is at 9%.
Not bad.
Detroit and Orlando are awful. Awful.
You're not going to overtake them.
What's funny is Orlando has a ton of bigs. They may be looking at maybe somebody in between. Or maybe that's a team like, hey, Mo Bamba, that you could pry away from a guy and get a little bit of flyer action and talk about resetting and getting under the luxury tax.
Yeah.
But Houston, 10 wins. OKC, 12 wins. New Orleans, 13 wins. And Portland, 13 wins. They are firmly in the second tier of you suck. And if you make enough moves and you shut down Damian Lillard at the All-Star break, you can be a top 5 worst team in the NBA.
Oh, easily. Without Dame? Yeah. And we know CJ, like, the minute CJ's not feeling right, he's like, sit out.
Hey, that lung take a little while to heal? Yeah.
Yep.
Or you make that move for CJ at the deadline for that spare parts. Take a flyer on some young guys. See what happens. And that's where we get to with this stuff. So, it's a long roundabout way, but Beach Fan says we can suck more than OKC. No, we can't.
No.
No, we can't. They just... You trust Cronin to not draft a LaRue Martin or a Sam Bowie or a Greg Oden? Yeah, I do.
I mean, I think you have to.
I do. None of these guys have had injury profiles.
No.
When they drafted Greg, they knew Greg's leg was an inch longer than the other one. That was a known quantity.
There was a doctor that was like,
do not do this.
Red flag. And they were like, we're going to do it.
We're going to do it, and then we're going to try microfracture surgery, which is awful.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So, just so you know, you muted and unmuted. It was great.
Oh.
Hey.
So I unmuted for the cough.
And then muted back.
Muted back. Okay, cool.
The same thing I did the other day.
Good to know.
Yeah. But
glad I didn't fart.
I kind of wish you would have. Would have been a fitting end to the show. Would have been perfect. We're going to wrap it up here. Appreciate you guys. This is obviously the live show where it's a little bit more interactive. It's been fun to kind of get back and take some questions and just see what you guys want and see what you guys are thinking and answer what we can or not. But yeah, I am firmly, I am taking off my snapback and imagining this. I should go get one of my old Kevlars out of the shop and grab one of my combat helmets and I'd put on my goggles and assume position as tank commander.
Yeah.
Because I am firmly on that train.
Yeah, I don't think this team is showing any life of turning whatever they are around. And so if you're just going to make marginal moves that aren't going to change much,
the one caveat is if all of a sudden the Celtics like, screw it, Jaylen Brown for CJ and Covington.
I just can't see them. I can't see them getting that desperate.
I can't either. But you never know how stupid something gets, right?
Yeah.
Like if a Godfather offer comes in, I will politely put my tank commander hat around and go, I'm back.
Oh, if you can get Jaylen, yeah, game change.
Yeah. Like if we're talking game changing, it is what it is. Yes, we do have the Los Angeles Lakers tomorrow on New Year's Eve. We will have pre and post game coverage. We'll try to get out relatively quick on the post game just because it's New Year's Eve. It's Friday night. Be safe. Enjoy yourselves. Don't get too crazy. We will have a live watch party up and running, so you can come hang out. I'm efforting one of the guys from the Lakers. LA media is notoriously difficult to get a hold of, especially
very hard.
in LA.
Yeah.
But I will see what I can do. I do know a truckload of guys down there. And the fact that it's New Year's Eve probably makes it a little bit harder. But
Yeah.
I'll do what I can. If not, maybe we'll see if we can grab one of the local guys here since it is a road game and see if we can get some guys to come hang out. Otherwise, thank you all so very much. If you've been here the entire show, we appreciate you. Like, rate, review, subscribe. If you're new here, we appreciate you just as much, if not even more. We really, the channel has been so cool and so awesome to have, even in a really crappy year. Brandon and I talk about this all the time. It's nice to have this outlet to come vent even a little bit.
Yep.
It does get a little bit weird, and as Eduardo Tovar says, at least we don't have Russell Westbrook. Yes,
It's true.
That is a timeline that I'm glad I am not in that multiverse. Hopefully, I will get better so I can go see the new Spider-Man. That's what I'm getting pissed off
Ooh,
about.
brother, it is.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Really effing good.
Yeah. Well, I got 2 negative tests now, so I'm officially COVID free. Now I think I'm just dealing with ramifications of long COVID. But thank you all so very much. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's free. It's you can be a part of the community without paying any money. If you do want to be a paying member, awesome. Thank you. That will get you into live shows. That will also get you into, once we get into the new year, I will start doing some drawings for some tickets and some swag and stuff like that. I've got a bunch of stuff piled up. Evan M, like I said, has offered to send a bunch of prints out for the members. We'll get you guys entered into it. And Evan does awesome stuff. If you haven't already, please go check out his stuff. And thank you all so very much. You can find us on social media at Jack Ramsays, at Danny Marang, at Brandon Sprague. We will have the mailbag show on Sunday, so get your questions in. You can email us, jackedramsays@gmail.com. Those of you that have emailed over the last couple of weeks, I still have them. Obviously, we haven't had a mailbag pod because I was in Hawaii and then I was basically dying. So we will, if you haven't had yours answered, I will circle back to them and answer the ones that are still there. We appreciate you all so very much. Go enjoy the rest of your evenings. Go Blazers. Try not to let the momentary blip of what has been 51 years of pretty damn good basketball drag you down too much. At least you're not Sacramento Kings fans.
But you're not very far away from
hey, right now you're kind of like a quasi Kings fan. So
it beat us twice. So
yeah, well, I wasn't gonna say it. We appreciate you all so very much. Talk to you soon. We'll catch you in the pre and post game tomorrow on the live show. Take care. Bye.